President Donald Trump has once again placed himself at the center of a bold national ambition, this time by proposing an entirely new class of U.S. Navy battleships bearing his name. Announced from Mar-a-Lago, the so-called Trump-class battleships are presented as the most powerful surface warships ever conceived, a dramatic attempt to restore American maritime dominance at a moment when the U.S. Navy faces mounting pressure from China and growing doubts about its own shipbuilding capacity. The promise is sweeping and unapologetic, but the reality behind it is far more complex and risky. According to Navy fact sheets, the Trump class would be the largest U.S. surface combatants built since World War II, stretching up to 880 feet in length and displacing as much as 40,000 tons. That puts them in the same physical category as legendary battleships like the USS Missouri, which symbolized American industrial power at its peak. The difference, at least on paper, is firepower. The Navy claims these ships would deliver strike capability up to 80 times greater in range than previous classes, armed with hypersonic, nuclear-capable cruise missiles, massive vertical launch systems, railguns, lasers, and missile defenses. Trump himself has claimed the ships would be 100 times more powerful than their World War II predecessors. Yet, ambition alone does not build warships. The U.S. Navy is already struggling to deliver far smaller and less complex vessels on time and on budget. Navy Secretary John Phelan has publicly admitted that nearly every major shipbuilding program is behind schedule and significantly over budget, describing the system as being in disarray. The Constellation-class frigate program was recently canceled after falling years behind schedule, and even the Navy's newest aircraft carrier, the USS John F. Kennedy, is roughly 2 years late due to unresolved technical problems.
The Trump class would demand far more than incremental improvement. Ships of this size require enormous dry docks, specialized equipment, and a skilled workforce that the United States no longer has in abundance. Analysts warn that current shipyards are already stretched thin maintaining existing fleets, and that reactivating closed yards or building new ones would take years. Workforce shortages present another obstacle. Shipyard jobs are physically demanding and require extensive training, yet compete with lower-skilled jobs that often offer similar pay. Without a massive national recruitment and training effort, the industrial base needed for these battleships simply does not exist. Cost adds another layer of uncertainty. An Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer, currently the backbone of the U.S. surface fleet, costs around $2 billion per ship. Estimates suggest a single Trump-class battleship could cost as much as $15 billion. Trump has suggested these ships could eventually replace destroyers, but critics argue that concentrating so much firepower and funding into a small number of platforms creates enormous strategic and financial risk. History offers cautionary lessons. The Zumwalt-class destroyer program began in the 1990s with plans for 32 ships, but ultimately delivered just 3, with costs spiraling and missions redefined midstream. The Littoral Combat Ship program produced dozens of hulls, yet some were retired after only a few years due to reliability problems and unclear roles. Even some of the Trump-class weapon systems remain theoretical. The Navy canceled its railgun program in 2021 after technical challenges proved too difficult to overcome, and reviving it would require major breakthroughs in power generation and reliability.
Beyond construction, there is the question of relevance. Modern naval warfare is increasingly shaped by missiles, drones, and distributed forces rather than massive surface ships. China's DF-26 ballistic missile, often referred to as a carrier killer, was designed to strike large naval targets from long range, raising concerns about the survivability of America's largest vessels. Recent conflicts, including Ukraine's use of relatively inexpensive drones against Russian naval assets, have demonstrated how vulnerable even advanced ships can be to smaller, asymmetric threats. Some defense analysts argue that instead of investing in a few massive battleships, the U.S. should prioritize large numbers of smaller, cheaper, and more flexible vessels, along with unmanned systems. Dispersing firepower across many platforms reduces the risk of catastrophic loss and complicates an adversary's targeting calculations. The Pentagon itself has emphasized the need for forces that are more mobile, distributed, and resilient in the Pacific, directly reflecting concerns about China's growing missile and drone capabilities. Even if the Trump class were built successfully, crewing them would pose another challenge. Estimates suggest each ship would require between 650 and 850 sailors, at a time when the Navy already struggles with recruitment and retention.
Automation could reduce crew size, but that would require a cultural and technological shift the Navy has historically been slow to embrace.
Supporters of the plan argue that the United States has overcome similar challenges before. Trump has pointed to World War II, when American shipyards produced vessels at astonishing speed, and some analysts compare the proposal to John F. Kennedy's decision to launch the Apollo program at the height of the Cold War. In both cases, overwhelming national effort transformed strategic disadvantage into dominance. However, experts caution that this time the U.S. cannot act alone. China's naval expansion threatens not only American interests, but also those of allies like Japan and South Korea, making international cooperation essential. Early signs of that cooperation exist, including South Korean investment in U.S. shipyards, but legal and political barriers remain. The Trump-class battleship proposal is ultimately a test of more than engineering. It is a test of whether the United States can still translate vision into execution, whether it can rebuild industrial capacity at scale, and whether it is willing to adapt naval strategy to modern realities rather than nostalgia. The plan could mark the beginning of a renaissance in American shipbuilding, or it could become another costly chapter in a long history of overpromising and under-delivering. What is certain is that the future of U.S. naval power will be shaped not by slogans, but by the hard limits of time, money, and technology.